Right now, as you read this, your body is running a silent experiment, and most people are failing it without even knowing. The experiment isn't about what you eat, or how much you eat, or whether you eat organic or processed or somewhere in between. It's about a window, a narrow, biological window that opens right after every single meal you consume, and what you do inside that window changes everything. Here's the part that will stop you cold: 10 minutes of easy walking, done at exactly the right moment, controls your blood sugar better than 30 minutes of exercise done just a little too late. Dramatically better. And the science behind why is one of the most fascinating stories happening inside your body every single day. Let's go inside. Let's watch it happen, cell by cell, minute by minute, because once you see this, you can never unsee it. Every time you finish a meal, your digestive system begins a process that most people take entirely for granted. Within 15 to 30 minutes, the carbohydrates from your food, your rice, your bread, your pasta, your fruit, get broken down into glucose molecules and pushed directly into your bloodstream. This isn't a slow trickle. This is a flood. Your blood glucose, which normally sits at a calm, stable 80 to 90 milligrams per deciliter, can surge past 140, past 160, sometimes past 180 milligrams per deciliter after a large meal. That's nearly double your resting level, and it happens fast, within 30 to 45 minutes of your last bite. Now, most people hear this and think, so what? My body handles it. It always comes back down. And technically, yes. For most healthy people, blood sugar does return to baseline eventually. But here's what researchers have spent the last 2 decades quietly uncovering, and what mainstream health advice has been embarrassingly slow to communicate. Every single spike isn't harmless. Every surge and crash leaves a mark. Scientists have a name for the cellular damage that happens during these glucose spikes: oxidative stress. Picture it like rust forming on the inner lining of your blood vessels, microscopic, invisible, but cumulative. With every sharp rise in blood sugar, those delicate endothelial cells lining your arteries absorb a hit, tiny inflammatory signals fire, small proteins get damaged, the walls of your vessels become slightly stiffer, slightly more vulnerable. Do this once? Probably fine. Do this 3 times a day, 365 days a year, for decades? The damage stacks. Research now directly links these post-meal glucose surges to heart disease risk, chronic inflammation, accelerated brain aging, memory decline, and early markers of cognitive dysfunction even in people who are otherwise considered metabolically healthy. One landmark study found that the height of your glucose peaks after meals can predict your future cardiovascular risk more accurately than your fasting glucose alone. Let that sink in. It's not just about what your blood sugar does when you wake up in the morning. It's about what it does every single time you sit down to eat and then sit right back down again afterward. But here is the part that flips the entire story on its head: your body is not defenseless against this. With a built-in glucose defense system, and it is extraordinarily powerful when you actually use it. Most people know about insulin. Your pancreas releases it in response to rising blood sugar, and it acts like a key, unlocking your cells so they can absorb glucose from the blood. That's pathway number 1. It works. But it takes time, and in people with insulin resistance, it doesn't work as efficiently as it should. Now here's pathway number 2, the one almost nobody talks about, the one that changes everything. When your muscles physically contract, when they move, when they work, even gently, they activate a completely separate glucose absorption system that operates independently of insulin entirely. Inside your muscle cells live special proteins called GLUT4 transporters. Under normal resting conditions, these transporters sit dormant, but the moment your muscles start contracting, a sensor protein called AMPK gets activated, and AMPK sends an emergency signal that causes thousands of GLUT4 transporters to rush to the surface of your muscle cells like doors suddenly appearing in a wall. Those doors open. Glucose from your bloodstream floods in. Your blood sugar drops, not because your pancreas worked harder, but because your muscles physically vacuum the glucose out. This is your backup system. It's ancient, it's powerful, and it works even in people whose insulin response is compromised. The tragedy is that most of us activate this system at exactly the wrong time. We eat a meal, we sit down, we scroll our phones, we watch television, and the glucose has nowhere to go. The GLUT4 doors never appear. The pancreas screams louder and pumps out more insulin trying to compensate. The whole metabolic system strains under a pressure it was never designed to handle 3 times a day for years on end. Now here's where the science gets genuinely surprising and where decades of conventional advice gets turned upside down. For years, the standard wisdom was, wait at least 30 minutes after eating before you exercise. Don't walk on a full stomach. Let digestion happen first. This advice was so widespread, so accepted, that almost nobody thought to question it. Then a group of researchers decided to actually test it rigorously, with real people, real meals, and real measurements. They took a group of healthy adults and gave them a large glucose drink, the kind that produces a significant blood sugar spike, and then divided them into 3 groups. Group 1, sit completely still for 2 hours after the drink. No movement at all. Group 2, walk for just 10 minutes at an easy, comfortable pace immediately after finishing the drink. Group 3, sit still for 30 minutes, then walk for a full 30 minutes at the same easy pace. Logic and decades of conventional wisdom would suggest Group 3 wins. 3 times more walking. A proper cool-down period for digestion. Surely that produces the best outcome. But that is not what the data showed. Group 2, the 10-minute immediate walk, produced the lowest blood sugar peak, the smoothest glucose curve, and the best overall glycemic control across the following 2 hours. Group 3, with triple the walking time, helped, but not nearly as much as the 10 minutes taken immediately. The researchers' conclusion was stark: timing beats duration when it comes to blood sugar management after meals. By the time you wait 30 minutes to start moving, your glucose has already reached its peak. The spike has already happened. The oxidative stress has already begun. You're no longer preventing the problem, you're trying to repair it after the fact. But when you move immediately, you intercept the glucose as it enters the bloodstream, you deploy your GLUT4 defense system at precisely the moment when the flood of sugar is arriving at your muscle's doorstep. Let me walk you through exactly what's happening inside your body during those critical post-meal minutes, because the detail matters. Minutes 0 to 10, you've just finished eating a carbohydrate-heavy meal. Digestion begins. Glucose molecules start entering your bloodstream first as a trickle, then as a wave. Your pancreas senses the rise and releases insulin as a signal. But if you're sitting still, your muscles are in standby mode, they have no immediate energy demand and no reason to open their glucose doors. The sugar builds in your blood. Minutes 10 to 20, now imagine you stand up. You start walking, nothing dramatic, just a relaxed stroll around the block, down the hallway, around the yard. The moment your muscles begin contracting rhythmically, AMPK activates. GLUT4 transporters flood to the surface of your muscle cells. Glucose starts getting pulled out of your bloodstream at a rate your resting body simply cannot match. Your blood sugar, which was climbing toward 180, plateaus at maybe 140 or 150 instead. That 30 to 40 milligram difference sounds small on paper. Inside your arteries, it's the difference between a manageable ripple and a damaging wave. Minutes 20 to 30, you finish your walk and sit down. But the protection doesn't end there. Your muscles remain insulin sensitive for hours after exercise, the GLUT4 doors stay partially propped open. Any remaining glucose continues to be absorbed more efficiently. Your blood sugar returns to baseline faster, more smoothly, with a flatter curve and a lower overall area under the glucose arc. Over a full 2-hour post-meal window, studies consistently show that this 10-minute walk lowers your average glucose, reduces your glucose peak, and shrinks your total glucose exposure, all three metrics that predict long-term metabolic health. And perhaps the most important finding of all, not a single participant in these studies reported stomach cramps or digestive discomfort from walking immediately after eating. In fact, gentle walking actively stimulates peristalsis, the rhythmic contractions of your intestines, which can improve digestion rather than interfere with it. Now let's talk about the other side of the equation. What happens when you walk before you eat, specifically before your first meal of the day? When you wake up in the morning after 10 to 12 hours without food, your body is in a completely different metabolic state. Your blood sugar is low. Your insulin is quiet. Your glycogen stores, the sugar your liver and muscles hold in reserve, are running near empty from fueling your brain and basic functions through the night. When you go for a walk in this fasted state, your muscles still need fuel, but there's no fresh glucose arriving from a recent meal. So your body reaches into a different storage locker entirely. An enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase activates inside your fat cells and begins breaking stored triglycerides into free fatty acids, releasing them into your bloodstream. Those fatty acids travel to your muscles, where they're burned as fuel directly, efficiently, in real time. You are, quite literally, walking on stored body fat. Over time, consistent fasted walking trains your metabolism to become what scientists call metabolically flexible. Your body gets increasingly better at switching between burning carbohydrates and burning fat depending on which fuel source is most available. Research confirms that fasted aerobic exercise produces significantly greater fat oxidation compared to the same exercise performed after a meal. For body composition, for metabolic flexibility, for long-term energy management, this is a powerful tool. But here is the nuance that most content on this topic skips entirely, and skipping it is genuinely irresponsible. When you exercise without eating first, your body ramps up cortisol, a stress hormone that helps mobilize stored energy so your muscles have fuel to work with. In someone who is well rested, metabolically healthy, and operating from a place of low baseline stress, this cortisol pulse is brief, beneficial, and completely manageable. But in someone who is chronically sleep deprived, carrying high psychological stress, struggling with hormonal imbalances, or in a state of adrenal fatigue, that extra cortisol hit does the opposite of what you want. It can promote fat storage, particularly visceral fat around the abdomen. It can elevate your resting blood sugar. It can leave you feeling hollow, shaky, and drained for hours after what was supposed to be a healthy morning walk. So fasted walking is a tool, a genuinely powerful one, but it is not a universal rule, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling simplicity at the cost of accuracy. Try it gently. Pay close attention to how you feel during and in the hour after. Energized, clear-headed, calm? Your body is telling you this works for you right now. Shaky, anxious, foggy, irritable? Your body is telling you something different. Honor both signals equally. Let's make this ruthlessly practical, because the most brilliant biological insight is worthless if it never leaves the conversation and enters your actual life. After every main meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, stand up and walk for 10 minutes at a comfortable, conversational pace. Not a power walk. Not a jog. Not something that requires changing clothes or checking into a gym. A stroll. Around your home. Around your block. In a slow loop around the parking lot. Back and forth in a hallway. In place while you take a phone call. Across a park with a coffee in hand. The pace doesn't need to be intense. The terrain doesn't need to be varied. The location doesn't need to be scenic. What matters is continuous, rhythmic muscle contraction for 10 uninterrupted minutes, within 5 minutes of finishing your last bite. That is the non-negotiable core. 3 times a day. Done consistently. If you want to layer on the fasted walking protocol, 3 to 4 mornings per week, before breakfast, take a gentle 15 to 20 minute walk. Keep the intensity low. You're not training for a race, you're signaling your metabolism. Monitor your energy, your mood, and your hunger levels afterward. Let the feedback guide the frequency. That's the entire framework. It fits inside a busy parent's evening after dinner while kids play outside. It fits inside a remote worker's lunch break. It fits inside a commuter's morning before the first meal. It asks for 30 minutes of your day, 10 minutes, 3 times, in exchange for compound biological returns that accumulate month after month. Because here's what happens when you commit to this, not for a week, but for months. Your muscle cells begin producing more mitochondria, the energy-generating organelles that burn both glucose and fat. More mitochondria means higher metabolic capacity, better energy production, and dramatically improved glucose handling at the cellular level. Your insulin receptors become progressively more sensitive, which means your pancreas has to do less work to achieve the same result, less insulin released, less strain on the system, lower long-term risk of type 2 diabetes. Your HbA1c, the blood marker that reflects your average blood sugar across 3 full months, begins to fall, even without any changes to your diet. Your post-meal blood pressure and triglyceride levels improve. Your inflammatory markers decrease. Your resting heart rate trends lower. And your brain, which depends on stable glucose more than any other organ in your body, begins to operate with fewer energy crashes, fewer fog episodes, and sharper sustained focus. Large-scale epidemiological research out of Japan analyzed health data from millions of people and found that adding just 10 minutes of daily movement to an otherwise sedentary lifestyle produced measurable reductions in disease risk and all-cause mortality, findings significant enough that the Japanese government launched a national public health initiative called Plus 10 built entirely around this single intervention. Not 60 minutes. Not a gym membership. Not a diet overhaul. 10 minutes. Your body has never been your enemy. It has never been working against you. It has been running sophisticated chemistry on your behalf every hour of every day, processing fuel, clearing waste, patching damage, signaling danger, with extraordinary precision. What it needs from you is not perfection. It doesn't need you to be a biohacker or an athlete or a nutritional saint. It needs the right signal, at the right moment, delivered consistently enough for the system to respond. Walk after you eat. Move before your body has to fight alone. Give it 10 minutes. Watch what it gives you back.